In the dead of night, Claire Harper uncovers a chilling secret under her childhood home, a hidden pit with a child's shoe and the words, "I am the fourth," scratched in the dark. Who was Amelia, erased from every record? What horrors did Brighthaven Institute hide? This tale, though fictional, is inspired by real mysteries to educate and entertain. Stick around to unravel the truth that'll keep you up at night. Hit like, subscribe, comment, and share to join the hunt for answers. Don't miss the shocking twists ahead. The gravel crunched under the tires of Claire Harper's rental sedan, spitting dust into the late afternoon haze. Millinocket, Maine, sprawled out in front of her, a ghost of a town that used to hum with paper mills and logging trucks, but now sagged under decades of neglect. The air smelled of pine and decay, heavy with the kind of quiet that made your skin crawl. Claire's hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, as she pulled up to the house at 1120 Pine Hollow Lane. It loomed at the end of the drive, a rotting skeleton of peeling paint and rusted tin, its windows like empty eye sockets staring back at her. She hadn't been here since she was 8 years old, but the sight of it twisted her gut like a knife. She killed the engine and sat there, heart thumping, staring at the sagging porch. The house looked like it was holding its breath, waiting for her to make a move. In her lap was a laminated photograph, creased and yellowed, from 1986. It showed 3 kids being led out of this very house by social workers, their faces pale and pinched. Claire, her twin brother Ethan, and their baby sister Lily. But in the background, half hidden by the porch steps, was another girl, barefoot, with tangled blonde hair and eyes that seemed to pierce through the lens. Nobody had ever explained who she was. No name, no record, no nothing. Claire had spent weeks digging through county archives to find this uncropped version of the photo, and now it burned in her hands like a lit fuse. Amelia, Claire whispered, testing the name. It felt right, like a memory she'd buried so deep it hurt to pull it out. She didn't know where the name came from, only that it had been scratching at the back of her mind ever since she saw the girl's face. She stepped out of the car, boots crunching on the gravel, and slung her messenger bag over her shoulder. Inside were the essentials: gloves, a flashlight, a crowbar, and her phone. The air was thick with the whine of cicadas and the faint rot of old wood. The porch steps groaned under her weight, each one sagging like it might collapse. She stopped at the landing, her breath catching as she glanced at the spot where the girl had stood in the photo. The boards were warped now, split by time and weather, but the angle was unmistakable. Claire knelt, her fingers tracing the edges of a cracked plank. It was soft, giving slightly under her touch. Not just rot, there was a seam, deliberate and square, about 3 feet across. A trapdoor. Her heart kicked hard in her chest, like a trapped animal clawing to get out. She pulled the photograph from her bag and held it up, lining it with the porch. The girl Amelia had been standing right here, her bare toes curling into the dirt just beyond the steps. Claire's eyes flicked to the seam again. It wasn't there in 1986, or if it was, it had been buried under piles of trash and silence. She pulled out her phone and started a voice memo, her voice low and unsteady. May 5, 2025, 3:45 p.m. I'm at the old house on Pine Hollow Lane, Millinocket. Found what looks like a sealed trapdoor under the porch. Outline seems intentional, maybe original to the house, or added before '86. Preparing to open it. She stopped recording, slipped on her gloves, and grabbed the crowbar. The wood groaned as she wedged the metal into the seam, splinters cracking free like breaking bones. Her arms strained, muscles burning, but the board shifted, then popped loose with a dry snap. The trapdoor was real. A wave of sour air hit her, thick with the stench of rotted fabric, mold, and something metallic, like old blood. Claire gagged, stumbling back, one hand over her mouth. She fumbled for her flashlight and clicked it on, the beam slicing through the pitch-black square below. It wasn't a crawl space, it was a pit, maybe 5 feet deep, with dirt walls and a floor littered with debris. Tattered blankets, a cracked plastic doll with one eye missing, a scatter of plastic forks, and a single child's shoe. A pink canvas sneaker, faded but unmistakable, with a star patch sewn onto the side. Dirt and hair clung to it, like it had been down there for decades. Claire's breath hitched. Her hand shook as she snapped a photo with her phone, the flash washing out the shadows. She zoomed in on the image, her eyes catching something else. Scratched into the dust along the inside of the hatch, barely visible under the beam, were 4 words: "I am the fourth." Asterisk. Her knees buckled, and she dropped to the porch, the crowbar clattering beside her. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the cicadas. Her phone buzzed, sharp and jarring. A call from Ethan, she answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Hey, you at the house?" His voice was flat, guarded, like he was holding something back. "Yeah," she said, swallowing hard. "I found something, Ethan. A hatch under the porch. There's stuff inside: clothes, toys, a shoe, I think. I think she was real." A long pause. The line crackled. "You shouldn't be there," he said finally, his tone tight, like a wire about to snap. "There's writing," Claire pressed, her voice rising. "It says I am the fourth." Her name was Amelia, wasn't it? The girl from the photo. Another pause, longer this time. Ethan's breathing was uneven, like he was pacing. "No," he said, but the words sounded hollow, like a lie he didn't believe himself. "You're lying," Claire said quietly, her eyes locked on the dark pit below. "You know something." "I don't know what you're talking about," he snapped, but his voice cracked, betraying him. "Claire, just leave it alone." "You said she..." Claire shot back, her heart pounding. "You said you didn't think she'd still be there." "What did you mean, Ethan? Still be there?" Silence. Then, so soft, she almost missed it. "I didn't think she'd still be there." The words hung in the air, heavy and jagged, like broken glass. Claire's grip tightened on the phone. "What do you mean?" she demanded, her voice shaking now. "Who was she, Ethan? What happened to her?" Another pause, then a click. He hung up. Claire stared at the phone, her pulse roaring in her ears. The cicadas seemed louder now, their whine drilling into her skull. She dropped to her knees again, peering into the pit. The flashlight beam danced over the shoe, the doll, the blankets. It wasn't just junk, it was a grave for someone's childhood, someone's life. She started another voice memo, her voice barely above a whisper. May 5, 4:15 p.m. Confirmed presence of a concealed compartment under the porch. Found a child's shoe, toys, bedding. Etched text reads, "I am the fourth, Ethan. He knows something. He's hiding it." She stopped recording and stood, her legs unsteady. The house seemed to lean closer, its shadows stretching across the porch like fingers. Claire took a deep breath and lowered herself onto the crossbeam, her boots scraping against the wood. The pit was tight, claustrophobic, the air thick enough to choke on. She crouched low, the flashlight clenched between her teeth, and scanned the debris. The shoe wasn't alone. There was a cracked plastic mirror, its surface smudged with grime, and a pile of torn book pages, their edges chewed and frayed, like someone had ripped them apart in desperation. She picked up the mirror, her reflection distorted in the cloudy glass. For a split second, she thought she saw something move behind her, a flicker of shadow, too quick to be sure. She spun around, hard hammering. Nothing, just the dirt walls and the sagging joists above. But then she saw it, carved into a wooden support beam, deep and jagged, like it had been scratched with a nail. 4 stick figures, 3 with X's over their heads, one untouched with long hair and a circle around it. Claire's throat tightened. The air felt colder, heavier, like the house was watching her. A creak came from above, sharp and deliberate. Claire froze, clicking off her flashlight. Her breath caught in her chest, shallow and silent. Another creak, closer now, like footsteps on the porch. She reached for her phone, fingers trembling, but before she could dial, a voice called out, distant and crackling, like it came through a broken speaker. "Hello?" Claire's blood ran cold. Another voice followed, sharper, authoritative. "This is the Penobscot County Sheriff's Department. Step out onto the porch, hands where we can see them." She blinked, her mind racing. sheriff's department? She scrambled up through the hatch, her knees scraping against the splintered wood. Two deputies stood at the edge of the yard, hands resting on their belts, a white patrol truck idling behind them. One of them, a tall guy with thinning hair and a sunburned neck, spotted her as she emerged from the shadows. "Miss Harper?" he called, climbing the steps. His eyes flicked to the open hatch, the crowbar lying beside it. "We got a report. Neighbors said someone was breaking into the house." Claire exhaled hard, adrenaline still pumping. "I wasn't breaking in," she said, brushing dirt off her jeans. "I own the place. My aunt left it to me when she passed. I've got the deed in my bag." The deputy raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "Looks like you were prying something open." "It's my house," Claire said, her voice steady now. She gestured to the hatch. "You'll want to see this anyway." She showed them the pit, the shoe, the carvings. The second deputy, a younger woman with a tight ponytail, snapped photos while the tall one called it in. Within 30 minutes, a detective rolled up in an unmarked sedan. Samuel Cole, mid-50s, with a weathered face and a gray blazer that looked like it had seen better days. He knelt by the hatch, his flashlight sweeping the darkness, and let out a low whistle. "You found this today?" he asked, his Maine accent thick, like he'd been born and raised in these woods. "Yeah," Claire said, handing him the photograph. "This is from '86. The girl in the back, she's not in any records. No name, no mention, but she was here." Cole studied the photo, his jaw tightening. "This is from the rescue, right? Your brother, your sister?" Claire nodded. "But her?" She pointed to the barefoot girl. "Nobody remembers. I've been through every case file, every transcript. She's a ghost." Cole looked back at the house, its silhouette glowing amber in the fading light. "We're going to secure the site," he said, standing. "Forensics will need to go over every inch, if there's truth to this." He didn't finish, but Claire knew what he meant. The story they'd been told in '86 was a lie. She stepped back, her eyes drifting to the pit. The words, "I am the fourth," burned in her mind. Her phone buzzed again, another text from an unknown number. She opened it, her hands going cold. "Stop digging. There was no fourth child." Asterisk. Claire's breath caught. She looked at the photo again, at the girl's eyes staring through the decades, right into her soul. "Then why do I remember your name?" she whispered. The cicadas screamed louder, and somewhere in the house, a board creaked, like it was answering her. Claire Harper slumped onto the sagging motel bed, the springs creaking under her weight like they were groaning in protest. The room smelled of stale coffee and cheap air freshener, the kind that tried to mask the mildew but only made it worse. Outside, the neon sign of the Pineview Motor Lodge flickered, casting a sickly yellow glow through the blinds. It was just past 8 p.m. on May 5, 2025, and Millennick's quiet was deafening, broken only by the distant hum of a logging truck on Route 11. Claire's hands trembled as she clutched the laminated photograph from 1986, the one with the mystery girl Amelia staring out from the shadows of the porch. Her phone sat on the nightstand, the text from the unknown number still burning in her mind. "Stop digging. There was no fourth child." Asterisk. She tossed the photo onto the bed and rubbed her temples, trying to shove down the nausea climbing her throat. The memory of the trapdoor under the porch at 1120 Pine Hollow Lane clung to her like damp rot. That pit, with its child's shoe, tattered doll, and carved words, "I am the fourth," wasn't just a discovery, it was a scream from the past, one she couldn't unhear. She'd spent the last 2 hours at the motel desk, flipping through a stack of photocopied county records she'd pulled from the Millinocket library before heading to the house. Case files, property deeds, old newspaper clippings about the Harper kids' rescue in '86. Nothing mentioned a fourth child, not a whisper. But Claire knew better. She'd felt it, that tug in her gut, like a memory trying to claw its way free. She grabbed her phone and opened the voice memo from earlier, replaying her own shaky words. "Ethan, he knows something. He's hiding it." Her brother's voice echoed in her head, those 6 damning words. "I didn't think she'd still be there." Asterisk. What the hell did that mean? Claire scrolled to Ethan's number and hit call, her pulse hammering. It rang 4 times before he picked up. "Claire, what do you want?" Ethan's voice was rough, like he'd been drinking or hadn't slept in days. "You hung up on me," she said, her tone sharp enough to cut. "You said she's still there, Ethan." "Who? Amelia? The girl in the photo?" A long pause, the kind that felt like he was weighing every word. "I told you to drop it," he said finally, low and guarded. "You're digging up ghosts, Claire. You're gonna regret it." "Don't give me that crap," she snapped, standing now, pacing the threadbare carpet. "You knew her. You knew Amelia was real, and you're lying to me." "Why?" Another pause. She heard him breathing, uneven, like he was fighting something inside. "You don't get it," he said. "You were 8, Claire. You blocked it out. We all did. Just let it stay buried." "Buried?" Her voice cracked, loud enough to echo in the cramped room. "There's a damn pit under the porch, Ethan. A kid's shoe, toys, her name carved into the wood. She was there, and you're acting like she wasn't. What did you see back then? What did Mom and Dad do?" He didn't answer. The line went dead again. Claire stared at the phone, her hand shaking so hard she nearly dropped it. "See, coward," she muttered, tossing it onto the bed. She sank down beside it, her eyes landing on the photograph again. Amelia's face, half-shadowed, seemed to shift in the dim light, like she was watching her. Claire's chest tightened. She remembered something now, faint and jagged, like a splinter under her skin. A voice in the dark, singing softly through the walls of their old house. A lullaby, broken and uneven, about butterflies and shadows. She'd thought it was a dream, but dreams didn't leave shoes behind. Claire grabbed her messenger bag and dumped its contents onto the bed. Among the gloves, flashlight, and crowbar was a small metal box she'd found in her mother's old suitcase, tucked away in her apartment back in Portland. She'd brought it with her, not sure why, but now it felt like a lead weight. The box was rusted, its hinges squeaking as she pried it open. Inside was a folded stack of papers and a single cassette tape, unlabeled, its plastic casing cracked but intact. The papers were yellowed, some torn, covered in her mother's tight, frantic handwriting. Claire skimmed the top page, her breath catching at the words, "Subject number 4. Non-compliant. Brighthaven Institute recommends isolation protocol." Asterisk. Brighthaven Institute, Claire whispered, the name tasting bitter on her tongue. She'd never heard of it, but it sent a shiver down her spine, like she'd stumbled onto something too big to hold. The rest of the pages were a jumble of note states, observations, cryptic phrases like response to deprivation and butterfly conditioning, asterisk. One line stood out, underlined twice. Subject 4 resists. Relocate to secondary chamber. Asterisk. Claire's hands went cold. Secondary chamber. The pit under the porch? She grabbed the cassette and her portable tape player, a relic she'd bought at a thrift store for digging up old interviews. Her fingers fumbled as she loaded the tape, the machine hissing to life with a low hum. Static crackled, then a man's voice came through, low and monotone, chillingly familiar. It was her father, Thomas Harper, dead for 10 years but unmistakable. Documentation, July 12, 1986, he said, his voice flat, like he was reading a grocery list. Subject number 4 continues to resist sleep and food conditioning. Isolation protocol resumed. Nightlight revoked. Behavior inconsistent with siblings. Subject exhibits defiant traits, not suitable for transition. A faint whimper cut through the static. A child's voice, barely audible. "Please, I'll be good." Claire's heart stopped. It was her, Amelia. The tape hissed again, and her father's voice resumed. "Begin reinforcement cycle. Repeat the rhyme." Then came a chorus of young voices, 3, maybe 4 chanting in unison, their words mechanical, hollow. 1 for food and 2 for light, 3 for sleep, and 4 for night. The tape clicked, looping back to the start. Claire hit pause, her hand shaking so hard the player nearly slipped from her grip. She covered her mouth, tears stinging her eyes. That wasn't parenting. That was something else, something sick. She grabbed her phone and dialed Lily, her younger sister, who lived 70 miles away in Bangor. Lily was only 4 when they were pulled from the house in '86. Her memory's a soft blur of chaos and social workers. She was a social worker herself now, running a nonprofit for at-risk kids, but Claire hadn't told her about the photo or the pit. Not yet. The phone rang twice before Lily answered, her voice warm but tired. "Claire, you okay? It's late." "I'm in Millinocket," Claire said, her voice rough. "At the motel. I went to the house today." A pause. "The house? Why the hell would you go back there?" Claire swallowed, her eyes on the cassette player. "I found something, Lily. A photo from '86. You, me, Ethan, and another girl. She was there, standing by the porch. Nobody ever mentioned her." Lily's breath hitched. "Another girl?" "Claire, I don't remember anyone else." "You sure?" Claire pressed, pacing again. "You ever hear anything at night, back then? Singing, maybe? Or knocking on the walls?" A longer pause. Lily's voice dropped, almost a whisper. "I used to hear stuff, tapping, like, I don't know, mice or something. I thought it was just the house creaking. But sometimes I dream about a girl, singing, real soft, like she was scared to be heard. I told Mom once, and she said it was just nightmares." Claire's chest tightened. "It wasn't nightmares, Lily. Her name was Amelia. I found a pit under the porch today. Her stuff was in there, a shoe, a doll, her name carved into the wood. And I found a tape in Mom's things, Dad's voice, talking about subject number 4. They were doing something to her, Lily. Something awful." "Oh my God," Lily said, her voice breaking. "You're serious? You think there was another kid in the house?" "I know there was," Claire said, "and Ethan's lying about it. He knows something, but he won't talk." Lily went quiet. "Then, you think Mom and Dad, they heard her?" "I don't know," Claire admitted, her throat tight. "But I'm gonna find out. Can you meet me here tomorrow? I need you to see this." "Yeah," Lily said after a moment. "I'll drive up first thing. But Claire, be careful. That place. It's not right." Claire hung up and stared at the cassette again. She hit play, letting the tape run. The children's chant filled the room again, chilling her to the bone. 1 for food and 2 for light, 3 for sleep, and 4 for night. Then, softer, almost drowned by static, a single voice Amelia's whispered, "I'm still here. Don't let them make me disappear." The tape clicked off. Claire's hand shook as she set the player down. She grabbed the photograph and held it up to the dim light. Amelia's eyes seemed to follow her, pleading, accusing. Claire's mind raced, piecing together fragments of memory. The house had been a nightmare back then, a maze of trash bags, beer bottles, and sour blankets. She remembered her mother, Diane, screaming at them to stay quiet, her father locking doors that led nowhere. But there was something else, something she'd blocked out, a voice through the walls, a game of knocks. 4 taps, then 3, then 1. She'd thought it was Ethan, but now she wasn't sure. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of it. Another text from an unknown number. Asterisk. You're waking things that should stay asleep. Asterisk. Claire's blood ran cold. She typed a reply. Who is this? But it bounced back, undeliverable. She tossed the phone onto the bed and stood, her heart pounding. Someone was watching her, someone who knew about Amelia. But who? Ethan? A neighbor? Or something worse? She grabbed her car keys and headed out, the night air biting at her skin. The library was closed, but she needed answers now. She drove to the only place open, this lady at diner on Main Street, the kind of greasy spoon where truckers and insomniacs nursed coffee till dawn. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed, and the smell of burnt toast hung in the air. Claire slid into a booth, her bag beside her, and ordered a black coffee. The waitress, a woman with tired eyes and a name tag reading Barb, set the mug down with a clink. You're not from around here, Barb said, eyeing Claire's city boots and messenger bag. What brings you to Millinocket? Family stuff, Claire said, keeping it vague. She pulled out the photograph and slid it across the table. You ever hear about the Harper case, back in '86? Barb's face tightened, just for a second. Yeah, I remember. Big news around here. Kids pulled out of a hoarder house, parents arrested. Sad story. Claire leaned forward. This photo's from that day. See this girl? She pointed to Amelia. She's not in any of the reports. You ever hear about a fourth kid? Barb squinted at the photo, her fingers pausing on the edge of the table. Can't say I have. But that house, folks said it was cursed. Strange noises at night, lights flickering when nobody was home. Nobody wanted to buy it after. Claire's pulse quickened. Noises? Like what? Barb shrugged, but her eyes darted away. Singing, maybe, or crying. Hard to tell. I was just a kid myself back then. You should talk to old man Pritchard. He lived next door to that place for years. Claire nodded, jotting the name down in her notebook. Thanks, Barb. She slid a $10 bill across the table and stood, her coffee untouched. As she headed for the door, Barb called after her. Be careful poking around that house. Some secrets don't want to be found. Claire drove back to the motel, her mind racing. Pritchard. She'd track him down tomorrow, after Lily got here. But as she pulled into the parking lot, her headlights caught something on the ground by her room's door. A small paper butterfly, folded neatly, its edges singed like it had been held over a flame. Claire's stomach dropped. She parked and stepped out, her boots crunching on the gravel. She picked up the butterfly, her hands trembling, and unfolded it. Inside, scrawled in red ink, were 2 words. Asterisk. She's listening. Asterisk. Claire spun around, scanning the dark parking lot. The neon sign flickered, casting shadows that moved like ghosts. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, sharp and frantic. She clutched the butterfly, her heart pounding, and whispered into the night, Amelia, what did they do to you? The diner's coffee was cold by the time Claire Harper met Samuel Cole at a corner booth, the vinyl seats cracked and sticky under her palms. It was just past 9 in the morning on May 6, 2025, and Millinocket's Main Street was waking up slow, with pickup trucks rumbling past and a faint mist curling off the Penobscot River. The air in the diner smelled of bacon grease and burnt toast, but Claire barely noticed. Her eyes were locked on the stack of papers in front of her, photocopies from the library, her mother's cryptic notes, and a single page with the words, Bright Haven Institute, underlined in red. The paper butterfly from last night, singed and scrawled with asterisk. She's listening, sat tucked in her messenger bag, a weight she couldn't shake. Cole slid into the booth across from her, his gray blazer rumpled, and his face etched with lines that said he'd seen too much of this town's underbelly. He was mid-50s, with a thick Maine accent and eyes that didn't miss a thing. You look like you haven't slept, he said, signaling the waitress for coffee. What's this about a pit under the porch? Claire pushed the photograph from 1986 across the table, her finger jabbing at the shadowy girl by the steps. Her name was Amelia. She was in the house with us, me, Ethan, Lily. Nobody mentioned her in the reports, but I found a trapdoor yesterday at 1120 Pine Hollow Lane. Her stuff was inside, a shoe, a doll, her name carved in the wood. And this. She slid her mother's notes toward him, pointing to the line about Bright Haven Institute. My parents weren't just neglectful. They were part of something. Experiments, maybe. On kids. Cole's jaw tightened as he scanned the notes. Bright Haven, he muttered, his voice low, like he was tasting something bitter. I heard that name before. Back in the 80s, I was a rookie deputy. We got a tip about some shady outfit running out of an old mill on the edge of town. Called themselves a behavioral research center for kids. Sounded legit, but the place gave me the creeps. Locked gates, no visitors, weird deliveries at night. I pushed to look into it, but the sheriff shut it down. Said it was above our pay grade. Claire leaned forward, her pulse quickening. You think it's connected? Cole sipped his coffee, his eyes narrowing. I think you're stirring up a hornet's nest. If Bright Haven was involved with your family, it wasn't just about you 3. They were picking kids nobody'd miss. Foster kids, runaways, kids with no paper trail. Claire's stomach churned. She pulled out the cassette from her bag, its cracked casing glinting under the diner's fluorescent lights. This was in my mom's stuff. It's my dad's voice, talking about subject number 4. That's Amelia. He says she's non-compliant, needs isolation. There's a kid's voice on it, begging. And a chant, 1 for food and 2 for light, 3 for sleep, and 4 for night. What the hell were they doing, Sam? Cole took the tape, turning it over in his hands, like it might bite. Jesus, Claire, this isn't just a cold case. This is something else. He paused, his voice dropping. You sure you want to keep digging? Whoever sent you that text last night knows you're here. They're watching. I don't have a choice, Claire said, her voice hard. Amelia was real. I heard her singing through the walls when I was a kid. I thought it was a dream, but it wasn't. I owe her this. Cole nodded, slow and grim. All right. Let's go back to the house. I want to see that pit for myself. They drove to Pine Hollow Lane in Cole's unmarked sedan, the road winding through dense pine forests that seemed to swallow the sunlight. The house loomed ahead, its sagging roof and peeling paint looking even worse in the morning light, like a corpse left out too long. Claire's boots crunched on the gravel as she led Cole to the porch, the trapdoor still open, its dark mouth yawning. The air was thick with the stench of mold and something sharper, like rusted metal. Cole knelt, his flashlight sweeping the pit, lingering on the pink sneaker and the carved words, I am the 4th, asterisk. This wasn't just a hiding spot, he said, his voice tight. This was a cage. Claire nodded, her throat dry. There's more. I found something in the Notsah code. 4132. I think it opens something else in the house. Cole's eyebrows shot up. A code? Where? Kitchen, Claire said, already moving. There's a pantry door we were never allowed to touch. Dad said it was for storage, but it had a lock, a digital one, weird for the 80s. They stepped inside, the house creaking around them like it was alive. The kitchen was a wreck-cracked linoleum, cabinets hanging off hinges, and a faint smell of sour milk that made Claire's stomach turn. The pantry door was in the corner, its paint chipped but the digital lock still intact, its numbers faded but glowing faintly when Claire punched in the code. 4132. A click echoed, loud in the silence, and the door groaned open. Behind it wasn't shelves or canned goods, but a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The air was cold, stale, with a metallic tang that made Claire's skin crawl. She clicked on her flashlight, the beam cutting through the gloom. The stairs were wood, warped and splintered, leading to a small room no bigger than a walk-in closet. In the center was a metal chair, bolted to the concrete floor, with leather straps dangling from the arms. On a rusted table nearby sat an old reel-to-reel recorder, its wires tangled like veins. Claire's heart pounded as she approached, her boots scuffing the dirt floor. Sam, look at this, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She pointed to the recorder, its tape labeled in faded marker, subject 4, July 86, asterisk. Cole's face hardened. Don't touch it yet. We need to bag it for evidence. But his eyes were on the walls, where scratches marked the concrete, hundreds of them, grouped in sets of 4, like someone had been counting days or screams. Claire ignored him, her fingers brushing the recorder. She hit play, and the machine hissed to life. A child's voice came through, soft and trembling. My name's Amelia. They say I'm bad. They say I'm not a butterfly. I don't want to be a butterfly. A pause, then a sob. Please, let me out. I'll be good. Claire's knees buckled, and she grabbed the table to steady herself. Cole's hand was on her shoulder, firm but gentle. Claire, breathe. We'll figure this out. The tape kept going, her father's voice cutting in, cold and clinical. Subject 4 fails compliance test. Recommend transfer to secondary chamber. Observation to continue. The tape clicked off, leaving the room silent except for Claire's ragged breathing. Secondary chamber, she whispered, her eyes darting around the room. That's not the pit under the porch. There's another one. Cole nodded, his flashlight sweeping the walls. He stopped at a corner where the concrete was uneven, like it had been patched in a hurry. Here, he said, tapping it with his boot. It sounded hollow. Claire grabbed her crowbar and started prying, the concrete crumbling under her force. Beneath it was a metal hatch, rusted but solid, with a padlock drilled into the frame. Before they could open it, a voice called from above, sharp and commanding. "Miss Harper? Detective Cole?" Claire froze, her heart in her throat. Cole motioned for her to stay quiet as he climbed the stairs, his hand on his holster. Claire followed, her crowbar still in hand. At the kitchen door stood a man in a tailored suit, his hair slicked back, his smile too perfect for this rotting house. Claire recognized him instantly. James Whitaker, the mayor of Millinocket, a local big shot who'd been on every billboard during the last election. "Mayor Whitaker," Cole said, his tone neutral, but his eyes sharp. "What brings you out here?" Whitaker's smile didn't waver, but his gaze flicked to Claire, then the open pantry door. "Heard there was a disturbance at the old Harper place. Thought I'd check in, make sure everything's under control." Claire's grip tightened on the crowbar. "It's my house," she said, her voice like steel. "I'm just looking into some family history." Whitaker's eyes narrowed, just for a second. "History's a tricky thing, Miss Harper. Sometimes it's better left alone. That place has caused enough pain, don't you think?" "Not as much as it caused her," Claire shot back, holding up the photograph. "Amelia, she was here, and nobody reported her. Why?" Whitaker's smile faltered, but he recovered fast. "I don't know any Amelia. You're chasing ghosts, Miss Harper. Be careful you don't fall into one." Cole stepped between them, his voice calm but firm. "We're handling it, Mayor. Thanks for your concern." Whitaker nodded, his eyes lingering on Claire a moment too long before he turned and walked out. The air felt heavier after he left, like the house was holding its breath again. Claire turned to Cole, her voice low. "He knows something. He's too damn calm for a guy who just showed up uninvited." Cole nodded, his jaw tight. Whitaker was around in '86. Ran a construction business back then. Did some work for Brighthaven, if I remember right. Claire's blood ran cold. "You think he's covering for them?" "I think we need to open that hatch," Cole said, heading back to the stairs. "And we need to do it now." They returned to the underground room, Claire's flashlight shaking in her hand, as Cole worked the padlock with bolt cutters. The lock snapped, and the hatch creaked open, releasing a gust of sour air. Inside was a narrow tunnel, barely 3 feet high, shored up with wood planks and rebar. Claire crawled in first, her knees scraping the dirt, the walls closing in like a coffin. The tunnel sloped downward, then leveled out into a small chamber. Her flashlight caught a glint of metallophile cabinet, rusted but intact, tucked against the wall. She pried it open, her hands trembling. Inside were folders, dozens of them, labeled with numbers and names. Subject 3, May Harper. Subject 4, Amelia. Subject 5, Tessa. Subject 6, Nora. Asterisk. Claire's breath caught at the last one. Nora static. Still active. Asterisk. She flipped through the folder, her eyes scanning clinical notes about conditioning trials and obedience thresholds. Tucked in the back was a hand-drawn map, its edges frayed, showing locations across Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. Red X's marked spots labeled secondary sites, asterisk. "Sam, look at this," Claire said, her voice shaking. Brighthaven wasn't just here. They had other places, other kids. Cole took the map, his face grim. "This is bigger than we thought. We need to get this to the state police." Before Claire could respond, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, her hand shaking as she read the text from an unknown number. "Nora sees you. Asterisk." Her heart stopped. She spun around, the flashlight beam darting across the tunnel, but there was nothing, just dirt and darkness. Then, from the corner of the chamber, a faint sound, a tap. 4, then 3, then 1. Claire's blood froze. She grabbed Cole's arm, her voice a whisper. "You hear that?" He nodded, his hand on his gun. "Stay behind me." They moved toward the sound, the tapping growing louder, more insistent. It was coming from the wall, where a loose board hung at an angle. Claire reached for it, her fingers trembling, and pulled it free. Behind it was a small cavity, and inside, a folded paper butterfly, its edges charred. Scrawled across its wings in red crayon, "Nora sees you." Claire stumbled back, her breath catching. "She's here," she whispered. "Nora's watching us." Claire Harper's boots sank into the muddy ground as she stood in front of the abandoned church on the outskirts of Millinocket, Maine. It was May 7, 2025, and the morning air was thick with fog, curling through the pines like ghostly fingers. The church was a husk, its steeple leaning like a broken spine, its stained glass windows shattered into jagged shards that glinted in the weak sunlight. The hand-drawn map from the underground chamber at 1120 Pine Hollow Lane had led her here, one of the red X's marked as a secondary site for Bright Haven Institute. Her heart pounded, the weight of the paper butterfly, "Nora sees you," still burning in her pocket. She hadn't slept, not after finding the map and the files naming Amelia, Tessa, Nora, and others. Kids who'd been erased, like they were nothing more than numbers. Detective Samuel Cole stood beside her, his gray blazer damp from the mist, his flashlight gripped tight. "This place hasn't been touched since the 90s, he said, his voice low, his Maine accent thick with unease. "Bright Haven used it as a community outreach front, but I always thought it was a cover. You sure about this, Claire?" "No," Claire admitted, her voice rough. She adjusted her messenger bag, the cassette tape, and her mother's notes tucked inside. "But Amelia was here. I know it. And Nora, she's out there, watching." She didn't mention the tapping she'd heard last night. 4, then 3, then 1, echoing in her dreams like a code she couldn't crack. Cole nodded, his jaw tight. "Stay close. If Whitaker's involved, he's not gonna like us poking around." They pushed through the church's warped double doors, the wood groaning under their hands. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and the sour tang of mildew. Pews were overturned, hymnals scattered like dead leaves across the floor. Claire's flashlight beam swept the room, catching on a faded mural of angels, their faces peeled away to reveal splintered wood. Her stomach churned. This wasn't a place of worship, it was a tomb. "Map said there's a basement," Claire said, her voice echoing in the hollow space. She pulled out the crumpled paper, its red X, marking a spot labeled, "Undercroft Access, **, behind the altar." Cole led the way, his boots crunching on broken glass. The altar was a slab of cracked marble, draped in a moldy cloth that smelled like it had been soaking in despair for decades. Behind it was a small door, barely visible, its edges blended into the paneled wall. Claire's fingers found a latch, rusted but movable. She yanked it open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into blackness. The air that wafted up was cold, sharp with the scent of damp earth and something metallic, like old blood. "Jesus," Cole muttered, shining his flashlight down. "You first, or me?" Claire didn't hesitate. She stepped onto the stairs, each one creaking under her weight, her flashlight shaking in her hand. The basement was a maze of concrete walls and rusted pipes, the air so thick it felt like breathing mud. At the far end was another door, this one steel, with a keypad lock that looked out of place in the crumbling church. Claire pulled out her mother's notes, her eyes scanning for the code from the Pine Hollow house. 4132. She punched it in, her fingers trembling. A green light blinked, and the door clicked open with a low groan. Inside was a room straight out of a nightmare. The walls were lined with filing cabinets, their drawers dented and rusted. In the center was a metal table, stained with dark splotches that made Claire's skin crawl. On the table sat an old VCR, its cords tangled like snakes, and a stack of videotapes labeled with numbers and dates. Claire's breath caught as she read the top one. Subject 4, Amelia, June 86, *. "Sam, look at this," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She grabbed the tape and shoved it into the VCR, which hummed to life despite its age. The screen flickered, then lit up with grainy footage. A girl Amelia sat in a chair like the one they'd found under the house, her wrists strapped down, her blonde hair matted with sweat. She was singing, her voice soft and broken, a lullaby about butterflies and shadows. A man's voice her father scut through, cold and clinical. Subject 4. Repeat the rhyme. Compliance is key. Claire's knees buckled, and she grabbed the table to steady herself. That's her, she whispered. That's Amelia. Cole's face was grim, his eyes locked on the screen. This is a damn lab, Claire. They weren't just abusing kids, they were studying them. Claire rifled through the filing cabinets, her hands shaking as she pulled out folders. One was labeled, Program Butterfly, Behavioral Conditioning Protocol. Asterisk. She skimmed the pages, her blood running cold. The documents outlined experiments to shape ideal subjects through isolation, deprivation, and psychological manipulation. Kids were chosen for their resilience or disposability, no families, no records. Amelia's file noted her as defiant, unsuitable for Phase 2. Another name caught her eye. Nora, Subject 6 static. Retained for observation, asterisk. Retained, Claire muttered. Nora's still out there. She's the one sending the texts. Before Cole could respond, footsteps echoed from the stairs. Claire froze, her heart pounding. Cole's hand went to his holster, but the figure that appeared in the doorway wasn't a stranger. It was Ethan, her brother, his face pale and drawn, his eyes wild with something that looked like fear or guilt. Claire, what the hell are you doing? He snapped, his voice shaking. I told you to stop. Claire stepped toward him, her fists clenched. You knew, Ethan. You knew about Amelia, about this place. Why didn't you tell me? Ethan's eyes darted to the VCR, where Amelia's image was frozen on the screen, her face twisted in pain. He looked away, his jaw tight. I was 7, Claire. I didn't understand. They said if I talked, they'd take you and Lily away. I thought she was gone. Gone? Claire's voice cracked, loud enough to echo in the cramped room. She was locked in a pit, Ethan. You heard her singing, didn't you? You heard the knocks. Ethan's shoulders slumped, his voice breaking. I heard her. I thought it was a game at first, the tapping. 4, 3, 1. But then Mom caught me listening at the wall. She said it was nothing, said I was imagining things. Then Amelia stopped singing, and I let it go. Claire's eyes burned with tears, but her anger burned hotter. You let her die, Ethan. You let her disappear. She didn't die, a new voice said, low and steady, from the shadows of the doorway. Claire spun around, her flashlight catching a woman's face mid-40s, with sharp cheekbones and dark eyes that seemed to see right through her. The woman stepped into the light, her hands raised, a faint scar running across her knuckles. Amelia didn't die. Not then. Cole's gun was out now, aimed at the woman. Who are you? He demanded. The woman's lips twitched, not quite a smile. I'm Nora, Subject 6. The one who watched. Claire's heart stopped. Nora? You sent the texts, the butterfly. Nora nodded, her eyes flicking to the VCR. I've been watching you, Claire. Ever since you went back to the house, you're the first one who remembered her name. Claire's mind raced, piecing it together. You were part of it, Brighthaven. They trained you to watch the other kids, didn't they? Nora's face hardened. They called me static, said I was good at being still, at listening. I recorded everything, every cry, every test. But I stopped when they took Amelia. I helped her escape, but they caught her again. I've been running ever since, keeping tabs on the ones who got out. Cole lowered his gun slightly, his voice sharp. Where's Amelia now? Nora's eyes darkened. I don't know. They moved her after I got her out of the house. But she's alive. I'd know if she wasn't. Claire's hand shook as she gripped the folder. Why didn't you go to the police? Why the texts, the creepy warnings? Nora's laugh was bitter. You think the police would have believed me? A kid with no name, no records? Brighthaven had people everywhere. Cops, judges, even the mayor. I had to stay quiet, stay hidden, but when I saw you digging, I knew you'd find it, the truth. Ethan stepped forward, his voice raw. You knew about this? All these years, you let us think we were crazy? Nora's eyes softened, just for a moment. I was trying to protect you, all of you, but you, Claire, you're too stubborn to stop. Before Claire could respond, a loud creak echoed from the stairs. Cole spun around, his gun raised again. "Who's there?" he called. No answer, but the air shifted, colder now, heavier. Claire's flashlight flickered, the beam stuttering across the walls. Then, from the darkness, a faint sound tapping. 4, 3, 1. Her blood froze. She grabbed Nora's arm, her voice a whisper. "That's her, isn't it? Amelia." Nora shook her head, her eyes wide. "Number, that's not Amelia, that's someone else." Claire's heart pounded as she moved toward the sound, her flashlight sweeping the basement. The tapping was coming from a corner, where a pile of old crates was stacked against the wall. She shoved them aside, her hand shaking, revealing a small trapdoor, no bigger than a dog crate, sealed with a rusted chain. Cole grabbed his bolt cutters, snapping the chain with a loud crack. Claire yanked the door open, the hinges screaming in protest. Inside was a shallow pit, barely 4 feet deep, its walls scratched with claw marks. At the bottom was a pile of tattered fabric, a child's nightgown, faded unicorns barely visible, and a small ceramic butterfly, cracked but intact, clutched in a skeletal hand. Claire gasped, stumbling back. "Amelia," she whispered, her voice breaking. Nora knelt beside her, her face pale. "That's not Amelia," she said, her voice barely audible. "That's Juniper, Subject 11. She was the last one they brought in before you were rescued." Claire's vision blurred with tears. "Juniper? There was another kid?" Nora nodded, her hands trembling as she touched the butterfly. "She was too young, too weak. They said she didn't count. They buried her here when CPS came for you." Cole's face was grim as he radioed for a forensic team. "We need a crew out here, now. Church on Old Mill Road. We've got remains." Claire's knees gave out, and she sank to the floor, her eyes locked on the tiny bones. "They killed her," she whispered. "They killed her and hid her like she was nothing." Nora's voice was soft, almost a whisper. "They did that to all of us. But Amelia, she fought. She left something behind, something they didn't want you to find." Claire's head snapped up. "What?" Nora reached into her jacket and pulled out a small notebook, its pages yellowed and curled. "I found this after she escaped. She hid it in the house, in a wall vent. It's hers." Claire took the notebook, her hand shaking as she opened it. The first page was covered in childlike scrawl, red crayon smeared across the words, "I am Amelia. I ran. They'll find me, but I left the butterflies. Follow them. Asterisk." Beneath it was a drawing of a butterfly with blue wings, and below that, a list of names: Tessa, Mira, Juniper, Nora. Next to Nora's name was a single word: static. Asterisk. Claire's breath caught. "She knew about you. She knew you were watching." Nora nodded, her eyes distant. "She trusted me. That's why I helped her. But they caught her, Claire. And they made sure she'd never talk." The tapping came again, louder now, from somewhere deeper in the basement. Claire's heart raced as she stood, her flashlight sweeping the darkness. "She's still here," she said, her voice trembling. "Amelia's trying to tell us something." Nora grabbed her arm, her grip tight. "It's not Amelia. It's the house. It remembers." The lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness for a split second before the flashlight kicked back on. Claire's phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out, her hand shaking. Another text from an unknown number. "You found Juniper. Now find me." Claire's blood ran cold. She looked at Nora, then Cole, her voice barely a whisper. "She's alive. Amelia's alive." The storm rolled into Millinocket, Maine, like a living thing, thunder cracking like bones and lightning slicing the sky into jagged pieces. It was May 8, 2025, just past 7 p.m., and Claire Harper stood in the backyard of 1120 Pine Hollow Lane, rain soaking her jacket, her boots sinking into the mud. The house loomed behind her, its sagging silhouette a dark bruise against the flashing clouds. Her heart pounded, the weight of Juniper's tiny bones found yesterday in the church basement still heavy in her chest. The ceramic butterfly clutched in that skeletal hand, the notebook with Amelia's desperate scrawl, and Nora's cryptic warning swirled in her mind like a fever dream. Nora, the woman who'd called herself Subject 6, stood beside her, her dark eyes scanning the tree line. Detective Samuel Cole was there too, his gray blazer drenched, his flashlight cutting through the downpour. "We shouldn't be here," Cole said, his voice barely audible over the wind's howl. "Forensics hasn't cleared the property yet." "We don't have time," Claire snapped, her voice sharp with desperation. She held Amelia's notebook, its pages now sealed in a plastic bag to protect them from the rain. The last entry burned in her memory. "I ran. They'll find me, but I left the butterflies. Follow them, asterisk. Amelia's alive, Sam. Nora says she got her out, but they caught her again. There's something else here, something she wanted us to find." Nora's face was grim, her scar glinting in the lightning's flash. "She hid it in the shed," she said, pointing to a rusted metal structure at the edge of the yard, half swallowed by kudzu and thorn bushes. "She told me before they took her. Said it was under the floor, where the tools were." Cole's eyes narrowed. "You're sure? If we're wrong, we're tampering with a crime scene." "I'm not wrong," Nora said, her voice like steel. "I've been running from Brighthaven for 30 years. I know what they hid." Claire led the way, her flashlight beam bouncing off the shed's warped door. The lock was rusted through, snapping easily under her crowbar's bite. Inside, the air was thick with grease and decay, the floor littered with broken shovels and paint cans. Claire's boots scuffed the concrete as she scanned the space, her pulse racing. Under the floor, she muttered, dropping to her knees. She ran her hands along the ground, feeling for seams. Her fingers caught on a faint ridge, barely visible under years of grime. "Here." Cole helped her pry up the concrete slab, the crowbar groaning as it tore through decades of neglect. Beneath was a wooden hatch, its edges splintered, sealed with a padlock that looked newer than the rest of the shed. Nora handed Cole her bolt cutters, and he snapped the lock with a loud crack. Claire yanked the hatch open, revealing a narrow tunnel sloping downward, its walls shored up with plywood and rebar. The air that spilled out was cold, sour, with a metallic tang that made Claire's stomach twist. "This isn't just a shed," Cole said, his voice tight. "This is another lab." Claire crawled in first, her flashlight shaking in her hand, the tunnel so tight her shoulders brushed the walls. Nora followed, then Cole, their breaths echoing in the claustrophobic space. The tunnel descended for about 20 feet before leveling out into a small chamber, its walls lined with soundproof foam and rusted metal shelves. In the center was a steel table, stained with dark splotches, and on it, a reel-to-reel recorder, its tape labeled, Subject 4, Amelia, Final Session, August 86, asterisk. Claire's heart stopped. "Final Session," she whispered, her fingers brushing the tape. "This is it." "Don't," Cole warned, his hand on her arm. "We need to preserve." "I need to know." Claire cut him off, her voice trembling. She hit play, and the machine hissed to life. Amelia's voice came through, soft and ragged, like she was fighting to stay awake. "I ran," she said, her words slurred. "I got out, but they're coming. They always find me. If you're hearing this, Claire, don't let them make me a number. My name's Amelia. I'm not 4. A sob broke through the static, then silence. Claire's eyes burned with tears, her hands shaking as she gripped the table. "She knew my name," she whispered. "She knew I'd find this." Nora's voice was low, urgent. "She left it for you. She hid it before they dragged her back. There's more, Claire. Keep looking." Claire's flashlight swept the shelves, landing on a metal box tucked in the corner. She pried it open, revealing a stack of files, their edges yellowed but intact. The top one was labeled Program Butterfly. Phase 3. Asterisk. She skimmed the pages, her blood running cold. The documents detailed a selection process for ideal subjects, kids chosen for their ability to withstand isolation and psychological conditioning. Amelia's file noted her as resistant, unsuitable for transfer. Another name stood out, Juniper, Subject 11 expired. Asterisk. Claire's stomach churned, expired, like she was a carton of milk. "There's a map," Nora said, pointing to a folded sheet at the bottom of the box. Claire unfolded it, revealing a network of locations across New England, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, even upstate New York. Each was marked with a butterfly symbol and a code: secondary site, observation, post, disposal, asterisk. One location, in Burlington, Vermont, was circled in red with the words, safe house. Asterisk. Safe house, Claire muttered, her heart racing. Amelia's there. She has to be. Before Cole could respond, headlights flashed through the shed's open door above, cutting through the rain like knives. Claire froze, her breath catching. Footsteps crunched on the gravel, heavy and deliberate. A voice called out, smooth and commanding, chillingly familiar. Miss Harper? Detective Cole? I know you're in there. Claire's blood ran cold. James Whitaker, the mayor, stood in the doorway, his suit soaked but his smile as slick as ever. Behind him were two men in dark jackets, their hands hovering near their waists, where bulges suggested concealed weapons. Cole's hand went to his holster, his voice low. Mayor Whitaker, funny seeing you out here in a storm. Whitaker's smile didn't waver, but his eyes were hard, like polished stones. You're digging where you shouldn't, detective. This property's under investigation. You're tampering with evidence. Claire stepped forward, her fists clenched, the notebook still in her hand. This is my house, Whitaker. And those files? They're about kid-skids like Amelia, like Juniper. Bright Haven was experimenting on them, and you know it. Whitaker's smile faltered. Just for a second. You're chasing fairy tales, Miss Harper. Those children were troubled, unstable. Bright Haven was trying to help them. Help? Claire's voice cracked, loud enough to echo in the tunnel. They locked them in pits, starved them, broke them. I heard Amelia's voice, Whitaker. She begged to be let out. Whitaker's eyes narrowed, his voice dropping to a hiss. You think you can tear down what we built? Those kids were assets, not people. They were meant to serve a purpose. Cole drew his gun, his voice steady but cold. Step back, Mayor. You're under arrest for obstruction, and that's just for starters. One of Whitaker's men moved, his hand flashing toward his jacket. Cole fired, the shot deafening in the tight space, and the man dropped, clutching his leg. The second man lunged, but Nora was faster, her knife gleaming as she tackled him to the ground. Claire grabbed the crowbar from her bag, her heart pounding, and swung it at Whitaker, who dodged, his smile gone. You're making a mistake, he snarled, backing toward the hatch. You have no idea what you're up against. Claire advanced, her voice like steel. I know exactly what I'm up against, and I'm gonna make sure the world knows Amelia's name. Whitaker turned and ran, scrambling up the tunnel. Cole started after him, but a sharp crack echoed from above, followed by the screech of tires on gravel. Claire's stomach dropped. He's getting away, she said, her voice shaking. Let him, Nora said, her knife still in hand, blood dripping from the blade. He's not the only one. Bright Haven's bigger than him. Cole winced, clutching his arm where a stray bullet had grazed him. We need to get these files to the state police, he said, his voice tight with pain, and we need to find that safe house. Claire nodded, her eyes on the map. Burlington. Amelia's there. I know it. Nora's face was unreadable, her voice low. I got her out once, took her to a safe house in Vermont, but they found her. I don't know if she's still there, but I left her with a friend, someone I trusted. Claire's heart raced. Who? Nora hesitated, then pulled out a small card from her pocket, its edges worn. Her name's Sarah Klein. She's a doctor, used to work with Bright Haven, but got out when she saw what they were doing. She's in Burlington. If Amelia's alive, Sarah knows where. Claire took the card, her hands trembling. You're coming with us. Nora shook her head. I can't. They're still looking for me. But I've got something else. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a USB drive. Recordings. Everything I took from Bright Haven before I ran. Names, dates, locations. I sent copies to the FBI last week, but they're slow. You need to get this to them. Claire took the drive, her mind reeling. You've been sitting on this for years? I was scared, Nora admitted, her voice breaking. But you're not. That's why I found you. Cole radioed for backup, his voice strained. "We've got a situation at Pine Hollow Lane. One suspect down, another fled. Send medics and a forensic team." He turned to Claire, his face pale. "We need to move. Whitaker's not gonna stop." Claire nodded, her eyes on the reel-to-reel recorder. She grabbed the tape, tucking it into her bag with the files. "We're going to Vermont, tonight." They climbed out of the tunnel, the storm raging harder now, rain lashing their faces. Cole's arm was bleeding, but he waved off Claire's concern, his jaw tight. Nora vanished into the trees, her figure swallowed by the dark, leaving only the USB drive and a whispered promise, "Find her." Claire and Cole stumbled to his sedan, the headlights cutting through the downpour. As they peeled out onto the road, Claire's phone buzzed with another text from an unknown number. Asterisk, "You're close." "Too close. Run." Asterisk. Her hand shook. As she deleted it, her eyes fixed on the map. Burlington was 150 miles away, a straight shot through the storm. She clutched the ceramic butterfly from Juniper's grave, its cracked wings digging into her palm. "Sam," she said, her voice barely audible over the rain. "What if it's a trap?" Cole's eyes were on the road, his knuckles white on the wheel. "Then we walk into it, for Amelia." The car sped into the night, lightning flashing like a warning. Claire's heart pounded, the words from Amelia's tape echoing in her head. "My name's Amelia. I'm not 4." She looked out the window, the forest blurring past, and whispered, "I'm coming, Amelia." "Hold on." The rain had stopped by the time Claire Harper's rental sedan crossed the state line into Vermont, but the air still crackled with the threat of another storm. It was just past midnight on May 9, 2025, and the highway to Burlington stretched out like a dark ribbon, flanked by dense pines that seemed to lean in closer with every mile. Claire's hands gripped the wheel, her knuckles white, the ceramic butterfly from Juniper's grave tucked in her jacket pocket, its cracked edges sharp against her fingers. Beside her, Detective Samuel Cole slouched in the passenger seat, his arm bandaged from the graze he'd taken in the shootout at Pine Hollow Lane. The USB drive Nora had given them sat in the console, its contents recordings, names, locations from Bright Haven Institute burning a hole in Claire's mind. "We're walking into God knows what," Cole muttered, his main accent thick with exhaustion. His face was pale, but his eyes were sharp, scanning the road. "You trust this Nora woman? She could be setting us up." Claire's jaw tightened. "I don't trust anyone, Sam." But she knew Amelia's name. She had the notebook. "She's our best shot." Cole grunted, rubbing his bandaged arm. "If this Sarah Klein in Burlington is real, she's been off the grid for years. Nobody hides that long unless they're scared or guilty." Claire didn't answer, her eyes fixed on the road. The map from the shed, marked with a red circle around a Burlington safe house, was spread across her lap. Amelia's last tape played on a loop in her head. "My name's Amelia. I'm not 4. Asterisk. She'd escaped once," Nora said, "only to be caught again. If she was still alive, she was in Vermont. If not..." Claire shoved the thought away, her heart pounding. She'd already found Juniper's bones. She couldn't lose Amelia too. They reached Burlington just before 2 a.m., the city quiet except for the hum of streetlights and the occasional bark of a dog. The safe house was a nondescript bungalow on a dead-end street, its paint peeling, its windows dark. Claire parked a block away, her hands trembling as she killed the engine. "This is it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Cole checked his gun, his face grim. "Stay behind me. If this goes south, you run." Claire nodded, but her eyes were on the house, its silhouette looming like a crouching beast. She grabbed her messenger bag, stuffed with the files, the notebook, and the USB drive, and followed Cole to the front door. The air was cold, heavy with the scent of wet grass and pine. Cole knocked, his fist loud in the silence. No answer. He knocked again, harder, and a light flickered on inside, faint and yellow. The door creaked open, revealing a woman in her 60s, her hair gray, and pulled into a tight bun, her eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Detective Cole?" she asked, her voice steady but cautious. "Sarah Klein?" Cole said, his hand still on his holster. "We're here about Amelia." The woman's face tightened, but she stepped aside. "Come in, quick." Inside, the house smelled of coffee and old books, its walls lined with shelves crammed with medical journals. Sarah led them to a small living room, where a single lamp cast long shadows. Claire's heart raced as she scanned the room, half expecting to see Amelia hiding in a corner. "Where is she?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "Nora said you know where Amelia is." Sarah's eyes softened, but there was something else there, fear, maybe, or guilt. "Sit down," she said, gesturing to a sagging couch. "You've got questions. I've got answers, but they're not easy." Claire stayed standing, her fists clenched. "I don't want answers. I want Amelia. She was in my house, locked in a pit, experimented on by Brighthaven. Nora said you helped her escape." Sarah nodded, her hands trembling as she poured coffee from a chip pot. "I was a doctor at Brighthaven in the 80s. Behavioral research, they called it. I thought I was helping traumatized kids, runaways, kids with no one, but it wasn't help, it was control. They were testing how far they could push them, how to break them without leaving marks." Claire's stomach churned. Amelia was one of them. "Yes," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "She was special, defiant. She wouldn't bend, no matter what they did. I couldn't watch it anymore. I got her out in '86, right before CPS came for you and your siblings. Nora helped me. But they found her, Claire. Brighthaven had eyes everywhere. Where is she now?" Claire's voice was sharp, cutting through the room like a blade. Sarah hesitated, her eyes darting to the window. "She's here, upstairs, but she's not the girl you remember." Claire's heart stopped. She pushed past Sarah, ignoring Cole's warning shout, and bolted up the narrow staircase. The hallway was dark, the air heavy with dust and silence. She threw open the first door she found, her flashlight sweeping the room. A woman sat on a small bed, her blonde hair streaked with gray, her face gaunt but unmistakable. Those eyes the same ones from the photograph, piercing and haunted, locked onto Claire's. "Amelia," Claire whispered, her voice breaking. She dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "It's me, Claire. I found you." Amelia's lips trembled, but she didn't move. "You shouldn't have come," she said, her voice soft, like she was afraid of being heard. "They're still looking." Claire crawled closer, her hand shaking as she reached for Amelia's. "Who? Brighthaven? Whitaker?" Amelia's eyes darkened. "All of them. They never stopped." Cole appeared in the doorway, his gun lowered, but his face tense. Sarah stood behind him, her hands clasped tight. "She's been here since '92, Sarah said. "I've kept her hidden, changed her name. She's Elizabeth now. But Brighthaven, they've got people everywhere. Cops, politicians, even the FBI." Claire's heart pounded as she took Amelia's hand, feeling the cold, thin fingers. "I found your notebook," she said, pulling it from her bag. "The butterflies. You told me to follow them." Amelia's eyes widened, a spark of something hope, maybe flashing in them. "You remembered," she whispered. I thought they'd make you forget." "Never," Claire said, her voice fierce. She pulled the ceramic butterfly from her pocket, its blue wings cracked but bright. "You kept this. I gave it to you, through the vent. You held onto it." Amelia's fingers closed around the butterfly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You were my sister," she said, her voice breaking, "even when they said I wasn't real." Cole cleared his throat, his voice low. "We need to move. Whitaker's still out there, and he's not alone. We've got the USB drive, the files. We can take this to the feds, but we need to get you both somewhere safe." Sarah shook her head, her face pale. "There's no safe. Brighthaven's got reach. They'll come for her." "Then we fight," Claire said, standing, her voice like steel. "I'm not losing her again." Before anyone could respond, headlights flashed through the window, bright and blinding. Tires screeched on the street outside, and heavy footsteps pounded toward the house. Cole's gun was up in an instant, his voice sharp. "Get down." The front door burst open, wood splintering, and 3 men in dark jackets stormed in, their guns drawn. Claire grabbed Amelia, pulling her behind the bed as bullets tore through the room. Cole fired back, his shots precise, dropping one of the men with a grunt. Sarah screamed, diving for cover, but a bullet caught her shoulder, blood spraying across the wall. "Stay with me," Claire shouted, shielding Amelia as glass shattered around them. Nora's voice echoed in her head. "I sent copies to the FBI." Asterisk. If Nora was telling the truth, help was coming. They just had to hold on. Cole took down another man, but the third grabbed Sarah, pressing a gun to her temple. "Drop it, detective," he snarled. "Or, she's dead." Cole hesitated, his gun steady but his eyes flickering with doubt. Claire's heart raced as she scanned the room, her hand closing around a lamp on the nightstand. She hurled it at the man, the heavy base cracking against his skull. He staggered, and Cole fired, dropping him with a single shot. The room fell silent except for Sarah's ragged breathing and the distant wail of sirens. Claire helped Amelia to her feet, her hands shaking. "We're getting out of here," she said, her voice fierce. "Now." They stumbled downstairs, Cole supporting Sarah, whose shoulder was bleeding but stable. Outside, police cars screeched to a halt, their lights flashing through the rain-soaked night. A woman in a navy windbreaker stepped out, her badge glinting. "FBI, Agent Ramirez," she called. "Nora sent us." Claire's knees nearly buckled with relief. "You've got the recordings?" she asked, clutching the USB drive. Ramirez nodded. "We're raiding Bright Haven's old sites tonight. Thanks to you and Nora, we've got enough to bury them." Claire turned to Amelia, who was shaking but standing tall. "You're safe now," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I promise." Amelia's eyes met hers, a faint smile breaking through. "You gave me my name back."